Hi, and welcome back to Questions from Quarantine. We got a question from Twitter this week. The question was, what will meetings, roundtables, and events look like post-COVID? I know this is on a lot of people's minds, especially as we start back with the fall semester and our own Homeland Security Project activities, which we are all planning remotely. So Juliette, if you wouldn't mind talking to us about the fall and your hopes for the spring, and then Dr. Bourdeaux, what things should look like medically post-COVID, as much as that means. Juliette?
Yeah, so it's a question of what you mean by post-COVID. So as anyone who's been listening or reading me, I'm in late 2021 at the earliest to talk about a life in which you're not thinking about the virus. But even, let's just look at the numbers. And this is Margaret, especially, even if you get 80% compliance on a vaccination program of a vaccine that's only 60% effective, or 60 or 70, I mean, your numbers are never going to be 100%. So there's going to be activities. So let's just extend the runway into 2022, of which there's going to be changes to them. And that may include masking. We've seen in Asia, after some of its respiratory diseases, masking becomes part of the way that people think about a post-COVID existence in a post-COVID world. So, or post-pandemic world. So I'm not there. I mean, in the sense like, yeah, a lot of things will look normal. Some industries won't survive. There was a test run with a major blockbuster movie this weekend. It went to release, I forget the name of the movie, and people aren't going. So this is what we've been talking about all along, which is just the confidence gap, right? That you can open up whatever you want. People have changed their lives, but that why I'm not totally depressed that I had to extend the runway. This is what I do with corporations and mayors and governors. This is my, how do you extend? There's lots that we can still do. We know what the basic categories are, which is, we know there's certain activities of which there is contact intensity that we want to limit. So that's gyms and bars and weddings where people are dancing. I mean, there's a news story out of Maine or Vermont that one single wedding has caused 8 deaths and only 7 of them of attendees. I mean, it's just, stop people, like, elope or wait. The second is, of course, the contact numbers. How many people are you around? And that's where I do think life will be different. You're just not, going to a concert or anything like that, or in the way we used to. And then the third is just all of our mitigation strategies, including the most important being masking, but also continuing to work from home and phased re-entry. So you can imagine, like at the Kennedy School where I teach, maybe I have a class of 50. Oh, let me do 60, it's easier to divide by 3. And I have 3 different pods. I'm meeting with some of them in person while the other 40, a third of them in person while the other 40 are online. So there's going to be variations like that. But I think the post-COVID world, there's lots of things that we will do differently, including probably working, but we shouldn't be thinking that way now. We should think about how do we adapt to a world in which we now know so much more about the disease, where there's fewer hospitalizations, there's deaths have unfortunately are high, but they seem to have plateaued. We don't know what the fall is going to bring. So, one step at a time, and the next step is this next 14 to 15 months.
Dr. Bourdeaux?
Yes. So, Juliette is just absolutely right here. I think that, every time I've worked in a country that's had a massive catastrophe or armed conflict or something that has really, been very, profoundly difficult and disruptive, people really, like, as soon as they see that there is a end to a crisis, they really, like, it's like glue. They just really want to go back to what I call hyper normal. They want to try to do all of those things that they were doing beforehand, but even more so. There's a wonderful author, Eudora Welty, who talked about at the end of World War II. She said it was an era where people wanted to eat sugar and burn gas. But my hope is that actually by taking Juliette's advice, and really thinking about the things that, in ways in which our lives are actually improved through this experience, that we really start to build out, take some of those adaptive behaviors and stick with them. So and the reason I say that is because a lot of what we were doing that was sort of normal before this is kind of what set us up to get in have such difficulties now. So things like, remote work. I mean, that really has improved our air quality because people are not, driving into an office. It's also really connected me to globally to people I never would have interacted with because it was just this expectation I needed to travel there in order to talk to them. And so I'm sort of hoping that we'll just start to make a note of those things that are working well. Follow Juliette's advice, dig in now. This is the time to really try to live in the moment. If you can, and really sort of reflect on what can we get out of this moment that is potentially for the better.
Yeah.
And I also just say, COVID, even if we were to defeat this, there will be another pathogen out
Yeah.
there. They are coming. We are living in a new world. We're having more hurricanes. We're having more air. Climate change is here. We have more pathogens. So it's just going to be different.
I will say the long-term change. And this, this is, future employment for your peer group, Margaret, is a lot of the big companies are thinking of hiring chief health officers now. Someone who, in the same way that you have the chief security officer who's thinking about active shooters and hurricanes and chief safety and security officer, or you have the chief information security officer, the person who's thinking about cyber, you now have the chief health officer who is, especially for companies that have a global footprint, who's looking at the intelligence around. And I think it's a great idea to integrate that into these big companies. If you're Uber, no mask, no ride, period. Like, I mean, just to protect everyone, right? So I think that is that long-term, like integrating health security. Maybe one of the benefits of this is that these companies that are, worried about active shooters and, and cyber attacks are now recognizing, oh my God.
I love that. And, one of the things little factors I learned recently was, starting to look at the world that we live in now and recognizing the impacts that various other health emergencies and pandemics made and in ways we do business. And one of the small little ones is, if you live in New England, a lot of our furnaces are underneath our windows. And the reason was because after the 1918 flu pandemic, they realized that ventilation was very important in decreasing transmission of flu. And so those homes were designed so that heaters would heat the room with the windows open in the winter. So that's why you have your heater underneath your window. And we're going to get back to opening those windows.
Yeah, goodness knows the things that we're doing now, 500 years from now, people may say, what? Why do we do that? And be like, oh, remember the pandemic?
Someday they will unearth all of the TikTok videos we've created in the last several months.
Yeah.
Utterly baffled.
Flatten the curve. Where did that come from? So
thank you so much. This has been Questions from Quarantine. Please hashtag Questions from Quarantine for your chance to be answered next week.